Hello, my name is Evan, and welcome to Economics 101, your number one source for everything economics. America is approaching $40 trillion in national debt, but here's the scary part. The debt itself may not be the biggest problem anymore. The real problem is the cost of servicing that debt. Because as interest rates rise, the government has to spend more money just paying interest. And eventually, that creates a serious economic consequence. In today's video, we're going to break down what servicing the national debt actually means, why rising interest rates are making the problem worse, and what happens if America's debt spirals out of control or continues. Before we jump into the video, I have a quick favor that really helps grow the channel. If you enjoy simple breakdowns on economic markets and the Federal Reserve, hit the like button and subscribe so more people can find the channel. Now let's get into it. What does servicing the debt mean? When people hear national debt, they usually imagine one one giant bill America has to pay all at one time. That's not how things work. Think about it more so as a credit card. The government constantly borrows money by issuing treasury bonds. Investors, banks, pension funds, and even foreign countries buy those bonds because they're considered relatively safe. But those bonds come with interest payments, and servicing the debt simply means on paying the interest owed on the all of that borrowing. Think about it again like a giant national credit card. The problem is the balance keeps growing, and now interest rates are much higher than they were just a couple of years ago. So that changes everything. Um, we're going to talk about why higher interest rates are a huge problem. So you can kind of understand. Um, for years after your 2008 financial crisis, interest rates stayed extremely low. That lowered the government that allowed the government to borrow really cheaply. But inflation surged after the pandemic. So the Federal Reserve aggressively raised rates to fight inflation. The Fed funds rate jumped from near zero to above 5% at one point. And that means new government debt became far more expensive. So here's some key issues. You got a huge portion of U.S. debt uh, constantly rolls over. Okay, so like think about it like old old low rate debt matures. It gets replaced with um, newer debt carrying higher interest rates. That means America's interest payments are exploding higher, and this isn't theoretical anymore. Interest payments are becoming one of the largest expenses on the federal budget. Um, so the national debt is approaching $40 trillion. This is why this is such a big problem. Now, how this is a big problem. The national debt is approaching $40 trillion. Even a small increase in the average interest rate is going to increase the total payments. So, for example, if average borrowing costs rise just 1% on tens of trillions of debt, that can mean hundreds of billions in additional annual interest expenses. That's money that cannot be spent on other things that we need in society, like infrastructure, defense, healthcare, education, tax relief. All right. So instead, it goes toward servicing old borrowing. And the more debt grows, the harder it becomes to stabilize the system. All right. And we are approaching $40 trillion. This is what economists sometimes call a debt spiral. More debt creates more interest payments. More interest payments require more borrowing. And more borrowing creates even more debt. It's a debt spiral. That cycle can become dangerous if confidence weakens. So if confidence was what happens if confidence excuse me what happens if investors lose confidence? um, this is where things get really serious. The U.S. has historically benefited because investors trust treasury bonds. But if investors begin demanding higher yields to compensate for risk, borrowing costs rise even faster. So, and that with borrowing costs rising, that's going to affect government finances. It's going to affect the mortgage rates. It'll affect corporate borrowing. It'll affect consumer loans. All right. So, and suddenly the entire economy is going to be in a pinch or feel a little bit tighter. At the same time, the government faces difficult choices. You know, they have a couple options. Option one, you can raise taxes. Um, Option number two, you can they can cut spending. Option number three, they can borrow. You can borrow even more money. Okay. Option, you got another option. You got option four, all uh, um, allow higher inflation to reduce the real value of debt over time. None of these choices are politically easy. Um, and that's why debt discussions are becoming more important globally. Real quick pause. If if you want more breakdowns like this on inflation, debt, interest rates, and how the economy actually works, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. It really helps support the channel and keeps you informed financially. All right, so back into the video. Um, could we actually default on the debt? We got $40 trillion of debt. Could we actually default on it? Technically, the United States can always print dollars to meet any obligations it has. That's why most economists believe um, an outright default is more than likely not going to happen. But printing money creates another risk. Of course, it creates inflation, and inflation, in fact, and inflation itself acts as a hidden tax. I've talked about inflation in a lot of my previous videos. If the government relies too heavily on money creation, purchasing power weakens. So consumers will be paying more for, you know, your everyday essentials, food, housing, energy, insurance, everyday goods, pretty much. So even if America avoids formal default, people still feel the consequences economically. That's the part many people miss. The debt doesn't have to explode overnight to hurt living standards. Gradual, just a little financial pressure can still reshape the economy um, over time. So to sum everything up, to bring it the big picture, at the end of the day, America's debt problem isn't just about that big $40 trillion, that scary number. It's about the long-term cost of borrowing. As interest payments rise, they're going to affect everything. All right, we're gonna see it. You and I will see it in the form of taxes, inflation, government spending, interest rates, economic growth, and our personal finances. Um, the U.S. economy is still incredibly strong in many ways, but debt servicing is becoming a bigger and bigger conversation that investors, policymakers, everyday Americans um, can't ignore. So if you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Do you think America uh, can realistically manage a $40 trillion debt? This is Economics 101, your number one source for everything econ. Thank you.